Hogstye.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Hogseye. We are in one of the quieter parts of the football season. It is that calm before the storm being free agency, but it's coming right around the corner. When the people can start transition tagging and franchise tagging players. We know T. Higgins is looking like he's going to get tagged, which broke a lot of fans' hearts. I know. I feel bad for you guys who always think we're going to get the best guy every time. Even though that's not who this team is.
It's a very Dan Snyder thing to do.
It's a very Dan Snyder thing to do. I want to bounce a question off of you guys since we like to do our non-show stuff early on. So
I'm
my wife and I
excited to hear it.
Yes, my wife and I
Can
are
you tell?
watching our godson on the weekends a lot, and he's turning 14. So I'm trying to get him into stuff. He's not a sports kid. He's a nerdy kind of kid, which that's fine. I'm a nerd. I'm down with
I
that.
was gonna say, don't insult the poor child, man.
No, not at all. I work in AV and IT. You don't think I embrace
It's
nerddom?
inherently nerdy. Yes.
Yes. I'm trying to get him into like good comedies because when he was over, we're watching movies. He's like, I don't like comedies. He's like, first off, no one doesn't like comedies. And I was like, all right, have you never seen a Mel Brooks movie? Let's start you with Mel Brooks. I feel like that's a good place to start with a teenager, right?
I think he'd rather watch like some late night Cinemax thing, actually.
Well,
At Cinemax?
we did also buy him a cell phone for his birthday, so we have parental controls on it, but that was our gift to him.
Yeah, you might want to be careful about what he's looking at on the cell phone.
Yeah, well, that's what the parental controls are for, right?
He may be better than you on how to defeat him, though.
He might be. I'm a little worried about that. He is very good with attack.
And so you want to start him on Mel Brooks? That's the comedy you want to start him on?
I feel
the
like
1970s comedies.
Well, I started him with Blazing Saddles, which is early 90s. And we can work back to Blazing. I'm sorry, I started him with Robin Hood Men Tights. And we're going to work our way back to Blazing Saddles.
Why don't you get him in there with the Goonies? Start him with that.
That's not a bad one.
That is a great classic and an awesome movie.
It is. That's not a bad option.
I think you're going way too old. How old this kid is? A teenager? How old is he?
14.
I think you need to start him on like early 2000s stuff. Because you go back
is he
too
a sci-fi
far, he's
guy?
going to be like,
Oh, yeah, he's a big sci-fi guy.
Well, then get him in there with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1.
Well, he's seen that stuff. It's more like anything in his lifetime he's seen. But a lot of these kids, they don't watch classics. That's the problem.
Yeah, but to
that's
you,
true,
his version of a classic is not your version of a classic, okay?
Yeah.
What your version of a classic is ancient. Classics are going to be early 2000s for a kid who's 14.
Right. Well, I'm not starting with Abbott and Costello.
You're starting with Mel Brooks, which is just as old.
Mel Brooks is still alive, though, at least.
Like maybe,
barely.
Like maybe School of Rock.
School of Rock wouldn't be bad.
I personally have it.
Is Anchorman hard R? I don't want to hard R him,
Oh.
No, I've seen it because it's about guitars. I have to watch it, and that's not a hard R thing.
Anchorman's about guitars? What?
No, and Dave was talking about School of Rock.
Yes.
I've never seen Anchorman, so I can't speak to Anchorman.
Yeah,
School of Rock I've seen.
I wouldn't go Anchorman myself personally.
Not yet. No.
I think it's a bit overrated anyway. I've never been. I was always lukewarm on Anchorman, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I can get that. And Napoleon Dynamite, same. I'm that way with Napoleon Dynamite.
Why don't you go Hangover, and Hangover 2?
No one needs to be subjected to seeing what's his name, Ken, the Asian comedian. Seeing him run around naked the whole time. No one needs to see that yet.
Well, in Anchorman 2, if I recall, there were some very special Thai, people in that movie who kids should not look at.
Oh, that Hangover 2, yeah, definitely. No, I'm not going hard R yet. Like I have that much common sense.
I think we've
with
concluded
PG-13
that
range.
School of Rock is where you need to start.
That's not a bad one. I'll throw that one in the mix.
Don't go 1970s Mel Brooks and like Blazing Saddles. You never understand.
No.
I mean, you could always go with a great classic that's still awesome today, is Spaceballs.
Yeah,
and it's got the sci-fi that he likes.
that was gonna kind of be my one next week when he's
Yeah.
here.
I've never
Is
seen Spaceballs either.
what?
That's
Yeah.
great
I'm not
movie.
quite that nerdy, okay?
Oh, it's a
It
great spoof on Star Wars, man. It
it,
really
it
is.
is Rick Moranis' greatest role.
Rick Moranis had a great role.
Absolutely. Well, he has like 4 great
Great by
roles.
what perspective?
Uh,
If it's
great
something
by
more
the
than
fact that
0,
he's
that means
hilarious.
great, I guess.
Rick Moranis easily is the funniest person in that whole movie, and it's
I
a great
think
movie.
anybody who says Rick Moranis is hilarious needs to adjust their and think about their definition of hilarious. That's what I think.
Well, see, that's why this movie is his best role, his best comedic role he's ever had.
Right.
I mean, he was actually very, very good in this movie. And I'm not a
Yeah.
big Rick Moranis fan either. I'm with you on that. But this one, he was actually very good in this
Why
one.
don't you go a totally different direction? Do like Braveheart.
Because I have personal beef with Braveheart, as you I don't know if we've really talked about it on the show, but
You're
I have
going
a
to argue about the history and everything. It's just a movie. It's not
it's
a history.
personal,
It's not a
Steve. That it's my
documentary.
ancestors that they they did wrong in Braveheart.
It's a great movie, though.
It is a good movie. It is one of the most historically inaccurate movies ever made.
They never
even Mel
claimed it
Gibson
was.
admits
They
that
never
at this point.
claimed it was historically accurate.
Yeah, no, he's had to come out and say this is like the least historically accurate movie you will ever see.
I think Gladiator is probably the least historically accurate movie.
I mean,
anybody's
that's
ever
just
seen.
a work of complete fiction. And by the way, I saw Gladiator 2.
It
Did
was
you guys see
absolutely
that?
horrible. It was absolutely
It's
terrible.
almost unwatchable. It's so
Yes.
bad.
We talked about that, and it's just business, if I
Yeah.
recall.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrible. But why don't you show them Gladiator? See, that's perfect. That's like right in the sweet spot of how old you
Again, we're getting into that. Is that I have to check if it's R. I don't want
There
to
were
do
no hardcore adult scenes in there that I can recall.
no. There's some gore, but no. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Like it's that's why it would be R. It's not.
I was done
nudity.
with Gladiator 2 when they filled the Roman Coliseum with water, and then which apparently there is some historical precedent for that.
Oh
but
no,
then
they did that type of stuff.
They
yes.
had sharks.
Right. They
was done
did
with it
fill
at
the
that
Coliseum with water. I do believe they might have used crocodiles at one point, but never sharks. Sharks are too hard. Where are you
Where
going
are
to
they
keep
going to
these
get them?
sharks?
Where are they? Yeah, I was done with it at that point.
Yeah, no, it was that was where the movie's like really bad.
That was the apex of I'm tired of this and I
Right.
want to go home.
Yeah, no, it's a bad movie. If you love a good bad movie, don't watch that. It's not even a good bad movie.
No, it just is going to irritate. Although I have the worst movie. Here, we'll do this. The worst movie we've ever seen. I have mine already picked out. I know what it is.
I'd have to think about it, and I'm not going to throw like.
How about
that?
How about this? Let's narrow it down. The worst
All right.
movie of the last 5 years that you've seen. I'll give you mine. I went to see The Joker Part 2. That was the worst movie I've ever seen.
That was a very disappointing sequel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll put it this way. Mine was that new Batman movie they had out. Although
Really?
everyone
You didn't
says
like that?
I didn't like it because of the fact it was so slow. I tried watching it on 3 different occasions and I fell asleep all 3 times. And it's just and it's not because of the actor, I forget his name, who was in Twilight. I ignored all that. I get all that.
Yeah.
That's fine because some people didn't watch it because of that.
Pattinson, is that his name?
something like
Robert
that.
Pattinson, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never seen
But
the movie you're talking about, but I know that was the actor.
But I mean the opening scenes and how it started, it was just I'm so used to how Batman was when I watched that. I was just like, nah, I just can't. I can't. Batman for me on that one.
Okay, Alex.
Oh, it's so hard because I've seen so many really bad movies, and like you have those days where you have nothing going on a weekend, and you might just sit down on Amazon and throw up like 5 really bad movies in a row.
Some of us don't subscribe to Amazon, but
well,
yes.
You could do it on any service.
I could.
On any.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There was one zombie movie that I saw that was so bad that within 15 minutes I just turned it off. And I was like, I can't do this. I love bad movies. It might have been
A bad zombie movie that narrows it down to almost all of them.
That's not very.
But there's
descriptive.
there are good zombie movies, and then there's
there
just
aren't.
the awful zombie, like low budget, cheap. It might have been Overlords. I can't remember.
I
if
think
that's-
I win though because I actually paid money to go see Joker in a theater.
Yeah, see, I was going to, and then when the
Yeah, I didn't pay money.
the early
Yeah.
reviews came out, I was like, oh no.
See,
Oh,
yeah,
no.
well, I should have known when they said it was a musical. I should have known because I
Yeah.
hate musicals as a general rule. I hate musicals,
Yeah.
and especially one where it makes no sense to be a musical.
Oh, you know what? I just
That's
saw
why
it.
I
Section
never
31.
even watched it because of that.
You did the right thing.
I just saw Section 31 like 2 weeks ago on
What
Paramount.
is that? I've never heard
It's
of that.
the new Star Trek movie about like the Star Trek version of the CIA. It's
I
awful.
gave Star Trek up a long time ago.
Yeah, it is the worst Star Trek movie ever made because it might be the worst movie ever made.
Why don't we go with that one as your worst one then?
Yes, because people know that.
Yeah,
Some people know
the
that.
weird zombie movie is something you know that only you watch. So
It's a deep cut. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, there you go. There's
All
our
right.
intro, kids.
There's
All
us ranting because there's not a lot going on with the team, folks.
We have a lot to talk about, actually. On the show
Yeah,
today.
yeah. All right. So there are. Let's get into team news. The Commanders did make some moves to their coaching staff, and these are not big moves, but again, slow news day, so let's talk about them. They hired an assistant special teams coach, Brian Schneider. He was with the Seahawks back when Quinn was there. He was with the 49ers the last 2 years. So very logical hire for this coaching staff to bring him in to be an assistant special teams coach. Not a whole lot you can say about it other than that. Good veteran, longtime coach.
Here's what I would say about it is they need special teams coaching help because their special teams weren't that good last year.
No.
So if this guy can help, good for him.
Well, can he help them find a kicker who can last the whole season?
That wasn't even part of the problem. They weren't really good in kick returns.
Sure.
They need help, and they need a kicker for sure.
Let's be clear. That was also part of the problem, but there were many.
Well, of course.
There were many problems.
But that guy can't help with the kicker. They need to find someone who's not like the second-rate Denny's House of Waffles and kickers,
right.
Type
Which I think we got down to not even Denny's. We were into the IHOP territory.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. The other move, though, and this one got some headlines just because of the name, it is Jesse Madden. He's going to be the quality control guy on the offense, and he just graduated from Michigan. If you wonder why it's a big deal, it's because of who his grandfather was. And his grandfather may happen to be the most well-known name in coaching outside of Vince Lombardi.
Mr. John Madden?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. He is the grandson of John Madden, the guy from the video games, the guy from Monday Night and Sunday Night Football, the guy who won a Super Bowl, who invented the power I formation, I think, is what his claim to fame was.
So this just goes to show that nepotism is everything in the NFL. Because let me tell everybody, for those of you who don't know what a quality control coach is, that is the lowest of the low in an NFL coaching staff. Those are the guys who are like, hey, dude, I need a cup of coffee. Go put this film on. Go do this and that. They are the entry level positions. This guy you're talking about, Jesse, was that his name?
Jesse, yes.
Straight out of Michigan, brand new. What is he, like 22 or 23 or something years old?
Something like that. Yeah.
No experience at all. There's a million different people like Robbie Duncan types who could go do something like that, but he's going to get it because his name is Madden. I don't resent him for it. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, I'm just using it as an example of how really, really infected with nepotism the NFL is. That's my point.
If you want to know his playing career, I pulled up his game logs. He appeared in one game at Michigan.
So he got a scholarship because of his name, and he stuck around because of his name.
He was a backup quarterback and defensive back.
He got a job in the NFL because of his name.
He played one game, and I don't see an actual stat line. It just says he appeared.
Look, I mean, the kid's playing his hand as he was dealt,
Right.
You can't criticize him for it. I criticize people for falling into it.
Right. Yeah. Look, you know me. I'm as anti-nepotism as anybody. Even though my dad helped me out after I got out of college, gave me a crummy job for like the first year, but I'm still anti-nepotism despite that.
You were the beneficiary of it for a while, and now that you're through it, you're against it.
Right. Exactly. No one else.
I don't even
Uh,
resent the guy. Don't get me wrong. I don't resent the guy. I'm just
no.
saying the NFL is really horrible about nepotism, and this is an
The
example of it.
NFL
That's all
might be worse than any other sport,
I think it easily is.
except for maybe racing. Racing's crazy with it.
Oh, they have a
Yeah,
comfort zone with that. I mean, they're in a comfort zone with that. They want to bring in familiar faces, familiar names, and
Right.
it allows the status quo. It allows that good old boy network to remain intact as much as possible.
Right.
Because eventually down the line, it's going to wind up breaking apart at some point. Because these guys are going to get older, new owners are going to come in, and
Yeah.
things are going to start happening down the road. But right now, they're trying to hold on to that right now. So.
Yeah. So the one thing I need from him as a Madden, I need the family turducken recipe. That needs to be sent out to the fans, because that is what I love John Madden most for, is that time on Monday Night Football when he literally just ripped open an entire turducken and ate it with his bare hands.
Well, wasn't it? So isn't the turducken just a chicken inside a duck inside a turkey? Is that what it was?
It might be a different order, but yes.
The turkey was the outside thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was
It's
either
smallest to largest.
yeah,
So
whichever.
Yeah.
yeah, you stuff one in, and then you have like stuffing or something in
So
between
I don't
each
know if
layer.
John Madden was sophisticated enough to have a recipe for it. He was just throw some meat in there. He's going to tear it apart with his hands.
Yeah,
It's simple as
but
that.
he literally sawed it with his hand down the center of the turkey.
I'm saying what he doesn't have is,
Yeah.
the guy from that, the TV show, preparing exquisitely prepared Thanksgiving meal. This is like a guy who said, put a chicken inside a duck inside a turkey, and I want to eat it. Period.
Right. Well, but that was John Madden who said that.
Yes.
Like it was his production
That's
meeting.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We don't have.
I want to eat it on air. It's gonna be fun.
There's no elite cook,
Wait.
doing this.
This game's gonna be a blowout. I need to do something.
Yes, that was it.
But yes, we need that recipe. Thank you. Thank you, Jesse
Maybe we
Madden.
can get Jesse Madden on the show, not because we care about his opinion about football, because Alex gonna ambush him with the
I want
turducken
to talk about his grandfather's diet. John Madden loved to eat. You can't look at that man and say he didn't love to eat.
He did
Of
love
course
to eat.
not.
Yeah.
And,
All right.
and it showed.
It did show. Other news, NFL news. The salary cap number hasn't been fully announced, but the NFL came out today and said they know the range. It's going to be between 277.5 million to 281.5 million. So we know within 5 million. It's a little higher than a lot of people projected. I know, like you said, it was what, 5 million or so more than you thought.
I had estimated 265.
265.
And
Okay.
so I updated my chart real quick, and because my chart, I've worked on it for years, and everything calculates for me.
Right.
So with that, the bottom line is at 275.1, which is the lowest the NFL said, throwing in and taking into account that Washington's going to have a rollover cap, which I had at I think 19 million.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Like
then
that.
so that puts Washington's total cap space right now in the Rule of 51 at about 92 million. So if you subtract, a pad of about 10 million or so,
Mm-hmm.
and then another pad of about 10 million for draft picks, that puts you now into like the 70 million-ish range as to what the max that they would reasonably spend in free agency.
Yeah. Which is still very good.
It's a lot.
That's a
Yeah.
lot of money
Yeah.
to play with, and
Yep.
they need to. We're going to be talking about some free agents coming up here next, but like that's still a lot of money that can disappear quickly if you're not careful. If you spend it on like 2 or 3 big names, it all disappears, and they need a lot more than 2 or 3 guys. So
They do.
with that, we have 3 topics we got to cover in terms of the roster. Let's do the free agents first, and then we'll move to the draft. Does that make sense? All right. So the first one, we haven't published the article yet, I believe. Free agent quarterbacks.
All right. I wrote the free agent quarterback thing.
Yep.
So we'll run through this. We're going to run through all these kind of fast because we don't have a lot of time here. The philosophy here, obviously, Washington said at the starter clearly with Jane Daniels. His cap it's only about 8.5 million or so, a little more than that next year. So they actually have some money they could spend on this if they wanted to. Now I don't think it's a very good year for quarterbacks. So there's guys like Zach Wilson, Lance, who's the idiot from San
Trey
Francisco?
Lance.
Trey
Trey
Lance,
Lance,
thank
yeah.
you. Those aren't backups. And so I just with the backups, the start obviously is Marcus Mariota. I think he's the perfect backup, for Washington. We don't need to review his. We've already reviewed him ad nauseum. Spotrac has an estimate of his value at 4.2 million, which incidentally is less than what he got last year, which was 6 million.
I didn't realize
Um,
they had him that low. That's
they had him
surprising.
that low. Yeah, if they could grab Marcus Mariota, grab him. Now the obvious challenge is some people may want him to be a starter. So
There's been a
Jacob,
lot of chatter about that.
right?
Yeah.
So they might not be able to grab him. So the next one to me is Jacoby Brissett,
Bringing
32
him
years
back.
old, but great backup. He was with Washington for 5 minutes. Um, his 3.1 million is what Spotrac has him at. So I think Brissett is another one. He would fit pretty well. Andy Dalton, I've got him down next. 30. Granted, he's 37 years old.
I
Um,
think Carolina just got done giving him an extension. I
well,
thought
I was going to
Dalton.
that in that I know it was rumored that Carolina wanted to do that. If they have done it, I haven't checked in a couple of days, so I'll take your word for it, Dave. If
Well,
they
I'll look it up to make sure why you
Okay,
do why
all
you
right.
go through this.
So, believe it or not, the next one, and this is just an accident, but Taylor Heineke.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor Heineke, before everybody laughs, Taylor Heineke is a guy who's great off script.
He is.
And that is exactly the way Jaden Daniels often plays. I think Taylor Heineke is another guy who is almost a perfect backup. He's a little shorter, a little smaller, not quite as mobile as
Mm-hmm.
like Mariota, but he's a guy who I think could do well as backup. Uh,
You know what else he brings is, and I'm not gonna say moxie, even though we used to love saying he had moxie, but he was always liked in the locker room. He was a great locker
yes.
room presence,
And he
and I
did,
think
and he
that
played with a lot of heart, I
yeah.
mean, when he was out there. And Spotrack's got him at 1.3 million, which is nothing. Um, this last one of the main candidates, I really hate this, but I'm going to list him anyway because it's my job. Jameis Winston.
Oof.
God help us if Jameis Winston gets a job. But I just point out, he's only 31. He size wise, he fits 6'4", 230.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Cleveland. He was a backup to the resident creepo up there, Deshaun Watson. He's valued because he's a big name. It's listed at 6 million. I think it'd be terrible. That's why I listed him as last. Now I got four other names that I sort of count as like the other options: Mason Rudolph, Drew Lock, Mac Jones, and Justin Fields. Mason Rudolph
Now,
isn't a terrible idea,
no.
but Drew Lock isn't a horrible idea. Mac Jones and Justin Fields, especially Justin Fields, is truly a terrible idea, but he's available.
See,
Now,
I wouldn't.
as far as Andy Dalton, it was a 2-year extension, a contract
Mm,
worth $8 million, includes a $6 million guarantee with a max value of $10 million.
Okay, that
For
was just
Carolina.
must have
So
been
yeah,
in the last day or two because I wrote this over the weekend. So all right, so
yeah,
take
and
him
that's
off the
per
list.
ESPN.
Take him off the list. And so the basic list to me is Mariota, Brissett, Heineke are the main ones. Then you throw
right.
Jameis Winston in if you're terrible, if you're really stuck, and then Mason Rudolph, Drew Lock, Mac Jones, Justin Fields are opposite. I think Justin Fields especially would be absolutely horrible as a backup.
See, I don't hate Justin Fields as a
I
backup.
don't
I
hate him.
feel
I
like
think
he
it'd be
plays a similar style.
yeah, but I mean, he's former first round draft pick. He doesn't have a history of performance. He's not a veteran you can just kind of let go and let him play. I don't know. We might disagree. I don't like him as a
So
backup.
I don't love Justin Fields or Mac Jones, honestly, because one,
No.
they're both younger. I want, if we're going backups, and let's say Marcus Mariota gets a shot to start somewhere. I get it. Like you take that if you're him. I want another guy who's in his 30s, or he's been around, played a lot. I don't think Joe Flacco's gonna come back.
Joe
I know
Flacco's 40 years old. Yeah, I left him off. He's
yeah,
40. I
Yeah.
mean, that's
but
just too old.
it is too old. You're basically getting another quarterback coach at that point, and
Right.
just saying wear a jersey on Sunday.
But they need someone who can play. So I that's why
Yeah.
I had Jacoby Brissett second.
What about
He's
Garoppolo? He's still out there, right? I think he would technically be a free agent.
Woody. Let me check
Yeah.
real quick. I left him off, which
Uh,
maybe that's an
but
oversight. But let me check.
like that. But that's kind of my mindset is. And Brissett fits this. Heineke fits it. I want a guy who's had some starting experience, who's had some success. And, a guy who can realistically come in here and accept, I'm not the starter. I'm here to teach this kid how to improve his game even more.
Okay, so Garoppolo is a free agent too, so I left him off.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple guys like that. You don't need the cheap backup right now. You can spend
Well,
a
that's
little
my
money.
point. They
Yeah.
have a cap space to do it because they're only
Yeah.
paying Jaden Daniels $8 million, which in quarterback world is
Pennies.
nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would Marcus Mariota come back would be the number one though, right? For all of us.
Yeah,
For me,
absolutely.
yeah.
That's your number
Yeah.
one choice. If he moves on, what about you, Dave? Did any of the names stand out to you?
I'll be honest with you. Away from Heineke, I have no interest in bringing him back in the way that this fan base gravitated around him. We don't need that. I mean, that might be me just being petty with that, but I know how petty our fan base can be, and we still have guys who wish he never left, so I'd much try to stay away from him. Brissett is really the only real true big option on there that I would go after. Outside of that, I mean, everything else is just like throwing a dart in the wall, at the board, man, see what comes up. I'm not, I wouldn't be totally against Jameis Winston.
I just think he's a mess and he's dumb and I don't like him.
Yeah,
He doesn't provide you that what I'm talking about, right?
No.
No. So, but I don't know. And Justin Fields.
No.
I have a feeling that they can't get Brissett and Mariota can't come back. I have a feeling I wouldn't be surprised if they take a shot at Justin Fields to put him on this roster because at least he can emulate much of the playbook that Jaden Daniels can do at least.
I hear what you're saying. The problem is he's not an accomplished veteran. I mean, that's what
No,
I
you're
would
right.
wanna
You're
shoot
right.
for.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. That's why I'm not really
I
enthused
also
about it, but
I think Washington in free agency generally will have an advantage that they haven't had in a number of years, and that they were really good last year and they overperformed. And
yep.
they have a young coaching staff, and I think a veteran. I think Washington will have a leg up in signing people. Kind of generally, they would want to be a part of that, and particularly one of these veteran quarterbacks.
Well, and on the Justin Fields thing, let's be honest, he's still young enough where I think one of the quarterback needy teams will give him another
Try
shot.
to develop him. That's
Yeah.
right. Because the Bears were a mess. The Bears did an absolutely terrible job of
Yeah.
Right,
trying
and
to
he
develop him.
played okay with Pittsburgh when he was there.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, they went to Russell Wilson, I think, too early. I think Fields had given him a couple decent games in a row, and they pulled the plug too quickly.
It's like when you got a Russell Wilson there making a fortune. I mean,
Well, but they were only paying him $1 million. Remember, they were paying him nothing.
Were they?
Yeah, because of the weird contract with Denver. They had him on a minimum.
And I guess Tyrod Taylor isn't even a free agent this year, right? I'm assuming then by that. I thought he was available this year, but
Tyrod Taylor was not on my list here.
Yeah,
I don't believe so.
The problem is there's enough quarterback needy teams where I am worried that Mariota will go to somewhere like Cleveland or maybe one of the ones that's not going to be picking low enough, and he'll get a shot to start.
Oh, by the way, I left Sam Darnold off this list. He's obviously not a backup,
No.
So
right,
but he's out there. But obviously that's not an option.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be a tricky one because there's enough quarterbacks. By the way, have you seen? And Steve probably hasn't because he's not on social media. There's rumors about the Rams trading Matt Stafford out
to
there.
the Giants potentially. Yep.
Yeah, for a first rounder.
Why would they want to do that?
I don't know. I don't understand it. It's not a good quarterback class.
I have a feeling that's just a dumb Twitter rumor.
Yeah, I hope so because I think it's a stupid idea for both teams. Honestly, it doesn't make sense.
That is correct.
Yeah. But there's that one. Kirk Cousins is going to get traded. It sounds like, to who knows where.
Just not here.
Yeah. Thank goodness.
No, Kirk Cousins wouldn't. No, that's not a thing that's going to happen.
No. If he could accept the fact that he's now washed up and would be a great backup for a cheap deal, but when has Kirk Cousins ever accepted less money for anything?
Well, I mean, you
Yeah.
can only accept what people offer you.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
you know
how
what I'm
many
saying,
chances to start is he going to get?
right? But the man has made a fortune as a 500 quarterback.
Yes, that is true. All right, we
What
need
if,
to move on.
okay,
We've hit this. So I think Alex and I are firm on Jacoby Brissett. Which one? Who'd you
So am
say?
I.
Oh,
So am I,
Brissett. So
percent. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're all pro Brissett. I'd be okay with
Top
Heineke.
choice.
I just want a good vet. That's
I'd
my
be
big
okay
thing.
with Heineke too. So and Dave didn't like Heineke, so and none of us like Winston. So there you go.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Those are your
All right.
options. I think your best options.
Yep.
All right, let's move on and we'll talk about what was the defensive line
Defensive
free
line
agency.
free agency. Okay, I've got that one too. No one from Tampa wrote this. It also hasn't been published yet, but it will be this week here. I just haven't got
Right.
around to it yet. Okay, so the trick here is with this group is what to do with Jonathan Allen.
Of course, it starts there.
Right, it kind of begins and ends there because Jonathan Allen's got a ginormous cap hit. He's got small dead cap. Deron Payne is different because he is not an easy cut, and he's not a cut that would save a lot of money. Even if they could do it, they can only do it on certain circumstances. So it's really, no matter what anybody thinks, it's really John Allen. And so if they trade or cut John Allen, then you need another interior defensive lineman, one way or the other.
Right.
So in the interior, the guys who no one from Tampa listed was B.J. Hill, Osa. I never can pronounce this guy's name. Odigzua, D.J. Jones, Milton Williams, and Levi. Another one who I can't pronounce. Onwuzurki. Those are the interior players. I don't know if any of you have a lot to say about any of those guys in particular as interior potential signees. I really don't.
No. I would think if they first off, if they're cutting or moving on from John Allen, it's because they trust one of these younger guys to kind of step into the role.
Well, it'd probably be Johnny Newton.
Right. I'm assuming Newton, but they have some other guys that they brought in that they seem to play quite a bit last year down the stretch, and it was surprising honestly how some of these back of the roster guys were getting some playing time on the line.
Right.
It's really hard to tell for me because I think they don't know who's their scheme fit on the interior. Like neither Allen nor Deron Payne was a good fit for what Dan Quinn seems to be doing. I, by the way, I would absolutely try and trade Deron Payne. I know the cap hit doesn't make sense to do it, but you might get something for him now, and you might not get something for him later.
Okay, so trading is a
Mhm.
little easier. Okay, so
Yeah.
if you want the Deron Payne news here, open up my handy dandy chart. Okay, so he's got a $26 million cap hit next year.
Right.
If they traded him, pre June 1, they could save about $9.5 million.
Right.
That's the bottom line. If they traded him post June 1, it's more, but at that point, you're past the draft.
Yeah.
So think like they could hypothetically they could get rid of John Allen for about 16. I have the savings? 16 million in
Yeah.
savings. So they just cut John Allen outright, and then they save 9.5, so they could create about 23.5 million bucks if they really wanted to.
Right. I would not, and this is me as like if I were in their shoes, I would be looking for those trades. I would rather get picks because I don't think either fits your scheme. I think they want guys who are space eaters, not pass rushers. And go get somebody like get Ken Givens who played for the 49ers, so maybe Adam Peters likes him. I don't know. I don't think there's any ex Dallas defensive tackles this year, are there? I know
Well,
there's
so the media, according to no one, have connected Levi, on Wuzurki with
Mhm.
Dan Quinn because they were in Dallas. So I mean,
Okay.
there's one.
But you also
Yeah.
have Osa
Yeah, that
Gizua.
guy. None of us
Yeah.
can pronounce his name.
Right. I mean, I could definitely see him being a target for Dan Quinn, but that doesn't solve your defensive tackle problems. I mean, You had Milton Williams from Philadelphia, but once again, that doesn't solve your defensive tackle problems. I think right now, if you look at this list, B.J. Hill and that list probably makes the most sense because he's probably the best run stuffer, and then Jaron Reed right behind. But then they can both add some pass rush to that middle of the defensive line. But as far as against the run, they're probably your two best options.
Of course, B.J. Hill's 30, but
Yeah.
I mean, you still need something in there.
I'm
Besides,
just-
I have an answer for the young guy on there coming up for the draft side. So
Okay. All right.
Oh,
well,
okay.
we're gonna do that. Okay. So
Yeah.
outside players, obviously Washington desperately needs a pass rush.
Mhm.
The best pass rush they had last year was Dante Fowler, 10.5 sacks. But
Right.
they
And
really
he's
did
a-
lose
he's
something.
Really a linebacker. He's not an
Yeah.
end.
Right. They really did lose something when they let Montez Sweat go. Chase Young,
Mhm.
not so much. But Montez Sweat was a loss. They probably should have kept him. So I think, and so the guys that no one listed as potential signings here: Josh Sweat, Malcolm Kuntz, Baron Browning, and Deo, Odengbo. Josh Sweat is the obvious big name out of this
Yeah.
bunch.
I mean,
And then that's not to say, by the way, Myles Garrett, would have to be traded, and that's out there.
right. We're not. Yeah, not counting trades right now.
That's right. That's not free agency.
Josh Sweat, I don't think is leaving Philly. I'd be shocked if they let him walk, much less him walking and then coming to
Right after a Super Bowl, coming to a division rival.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unlikely.
highly unlikely that he's gone.
Well, actually, from what I'm hearing up here, for the money that he wants, for the money that Milton wants, and what Zach Bond wants, they're going to have to make a decision because they can't sign all three. Milton, I think,
Really?
will probably end up being an odd man out because he is interior, I do believe. But
Mhm.
now they have to make a decision between Josh Sweat or Zach Bond. And I'll be honest with you, they don't invest much in linebacker, but Zach Bond, I find it very difficult for them to move on from them. I really think Josh Sweat might wind up moving on to a different team this year.
Well, if he becomes available, I'm running to the phone. If I'm this team, man, we need that kind of that would be an impact player right away.
Yeah.
And by the way, one thing that people keep mentioning, I've seen is the idea of bringing back Chase Young. No, just no.
Oh,
We're
just
not bringing
stop.
back Chase
Stop
Young.
it. Yeah,
Well,
no.
he's
Stop
not
it.
good. Okay.
He's not good. He doesn't care about football.
And he's
Stop
going to
pretending
demand
that
money
he's good.
too. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
we all agree on that. Yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
not.
That's the hardest of passes for me right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
It-
also
the-
a big pass on Hassan Reddick too. I know he's a Temple guy and you love him, but that
Well-
guy is an absolute locker room
Yep.
distraction.
No,
and
I'm with
cancer,
you.
man.
He had some talent, but he's kind of problemed his way out of playing.
I mean,
I-
okay. So how many problems are you willing to put up with for his performance? I would say Washington shouldn't put up with problems because they have a good locker room. Let's not mess it up.
right.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
that's a big thing for Dan Quinn, man. He wants a good locker room.
Yeah.
He wants he wants everyone to kind of take a leadership role if they can.
But I think, make no mistake, they're going to sign one of these. They're going to sign one or more expensive defensive linemen, out of this group, or someone else. But they have to. I think John Allen does not look like he wants to be here. He was totally ineffective last year. He's way too expensive. He's going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think there's a chance they would go after DeMarcus Lawrence? I know he's way up there in age, but it's another ex-Cowboy. Dan Quinn worked with him. I know
It's-
he's not a big impact guy anymore.
You'd be foolish to not say it's not a possibility.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, yeah, he's old. That's the problem. I mean, he's
Yeah.
almost 33 years old.
You're talking about a 1-year gap.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
Because you can't fill all your needs obviously in in the draft this year.
And again, does Dallas want to let a guy like that walk right over to a division rival?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they might not care.
They might
And
not have a
speaking-
choice if Lawrence wants to go, but they wouldn't want
Speaking
to.
of division rival, if the Giants allow Ojulari to even sniff free agency, I think that's another option too as well because he's a very disruptive edge rusher himself.
Wouldn't think they're going to allow him to get to free agency.
I doubt it, but you're right. But
Yeah. I mean, it's not a great market for edge rushers. great ones don't become free agents. Let's be honest.
Oh yeah,
It's like a great quarterback. You don't let them go. You trade them.
I mean, Josh
Or
Sweat's probably the best one on the market.
he
If
easily is the best one on the
yeah,
market. He's in the prime of his career. Like you would get 4 or 5 good years out of him if he stays healthy.
I have a hard time believing that a move like that could be made from Philadelphia to Washington. But I mean, Dave, you're there. I mean, you said they got to let one of them go. Maybe it's him.
yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, especially what they had with Nolan Smith came into his own this past year.
Yeah.
Between Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and that, in the middle right there. And they got so much depth in that defensive line. That's one of those things where it's like, Zach Bond would add so much more value to this defense to keep him around as opposed to a Josh Sweat. So, but
I would absolutely. I would think he could fit into what they're trying to do here. That he would be the number one target.
yeah, because
So
I mean, because even when I look up news in this area, there's not even a hint of any renegotiation with him, no tags laid on or nothing like that at all. I really think Howie Roseman is going to make a decision or two this year that these Eagle fans are prepared for in terms of we got to let somebody go. I mean, it's they're because they have these younger guys that they're going to be coming up with having contracts over the next couple of years, especially on the offensive line and defensive line. If you invest that kind of money in Josh Sweat, you might put yourself in a hole on another position in need. And you may want to killing yourself on.
And they
So
don't have a ton of cap space either.
no,
no.
I mean, they're
Well,
not in desperate straits like the Saints, but they don't have a ton of space to spend on people.
yeah.
right.
And just by the way, we're not really counting a lot of the outside linebacker style edge rushers in this conversation,
Right.
right? Like,
No, well,
Yeah.
that's for another segment.
yeah. Yeah. Well, also Washington doesn't run a 3-4.
Right.
Yeah. So that plays into it. All right. Anything else we want to talk about with these free agent defensive linemen, or do we want to move to the draft class?
Only that Spotrac has Chase Young's calculated market value at. Are you ready? Take a guess.
I mean, I guess it's
14
overvalued.
million.
I'm gonna say
Dave's guess is 14 million.
Dave's saying 14.
Yeah.
Oh, my overvalued number was gonna be 9.
17.5 million.
What?
Wow.
That's
Yeah,
dramatically. Spotrac is totally wrong. Okay.
Yes.
You know what?
Anybody who pays 17 million for Chase Young has a screw loose.
Someone's going to give him a 2-year contract with an annual value of upwards of 15 million. They can get out of it after 1 year. It's going to be one of those type of incentive-laden deals. They're going to. Well, he's number 2 overall pick. He's got talent. We can harness this.
I mean, he's only 26. I get like he's not washed up age-wise, but the man has no heart.
Right.
It's gonna be some team with like some really incompetent ownership, like the Cowboys, who are like, we can fix them,
It would be a very Dallas thing to do, a guy like that.
Yeah.
Anybody that's wondering, so last year with the Saints, he had 5.5 sacks. 5.5 sacks on 31 tackles.
He had a lot of pressures, I remember hearing.
I don't have the right chart up for that.
Yeah. But that's classic Chase Young. About 5.5. He's not a high sack guy.
Not quite get there.
Yeah, doesn't quite get there. Lollygagging. He loves to lollygag.
Well, he's got like 2 moves.
Yes.
That's all he has.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and if you beat those 2 moves, he's done for the day.
So we all think it would be the dumbest possible thing Washington could do.
I think so.
Sign Chase. And if it wouldn't go well with the fans, and it would be horrible.
Right.
There's a segment of the fans that still love him.
There are who?
I don't know. They're out there though. Trust me.
Somebody
because they still wear his
Upper
jerseys
Marlboro,
at stadiums and stuff.
Somebody who's literally in Upper Marlboro. That's who's his fan.
Now it's just fans out there going, well, no one's utilized him correctly yet. I mean, come on, man. Been in the league for how many years now, and no one's still utilized him as correctly. I mean, that just doesn't even make any sense.
Well, and also, I mean, he's been 3-4 at the end.
Right.
It's not like it's a quarterback we're talking about here. We're talking about a guy whose sole mission in life is to get to the quarterback.
Right.
Period. I
Right.
mean, it's no they're not using him as a linebacker.
So,
You
and I think the irony is, if you remember how he always played more like a linebacker than a defensive end, and that was part of the issue.
played like a guy who was interested in getting paid but not playing.
Yeah. Yes. That's really the core of it. All right, let's move on. Let's start talking about the I'm sorry, not free agents, the rookies, because we have to overlap all this stuff because we're on the crush schedule this season. So we're gonna talk rookies, and we're starting with interior defensive line. Our buddy Tampa wrote this one as well.
He was
Dave,
busy
you
this
want
week.
to go through it?
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, he has 5 names listed as day one prospects.
Right.
Michigan's Mason Graham, 6'3", 320 pounds, the top overall D lineman in this draft. Walter Nolan, 6'3", 305 out of Mississippi. Kenneth Grant out of Michigan, 6'3", 339, and Derek Harmon, 6'5", 310 out of Oregon. I think he listed, and I agree, Kenneth Grant will probably be the one name that will be sitting there right around 29. And he's a guy that can give you both pass rush and run stopping ability. He controls the line of scrimmage very, very well, very dominant, very quick with his hands, good with his feet. So if they're going to go a first round pick on a guy, you could see someone like that being the guy right there.
He's got more of that nose tackle build, which
Yeah.
is, if I'm right, and that's what Dan Quinn kind of wants, is like he wants one defensive tackle to really gobble up, the center guard every time. You need a nose tackle because they don't really have. Deron Payne doesn't
But
really
they're
do
not
it.
a 3-4 team though.
But they like to play that offset 4-3 a lot. That's why.
That doesn't mean they need a classic nose tackle though.
No, you're right. They don't need like a Vince Wilfork, that's for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, surely Washington isn't going to put yet another first-round draft pick into the defensive line. Could they really do that? What they really, honest to God, need is an offensive lineman. That's what they need.
Of course.
I find it hard to believe they're going to do first-round pick DL. Maybe they would. Maybe I'm wrong.
The hard part about it is, of course, you're picking 29. You're not talking about a lock-in, like,
No.
hey, this is our target. We're getting this guy, and he's going to start day one. At 29, you really are trying to get just the best player who's on the board at that point.
And and when you look at offensive linemen, obviously I'll be doing that here shortly. And from all initial reports, this draft isn't really super deep in elite top end tackles. They got some good interior linemen in this draft.
Yeah, a lot of guards.
I mean, yeah, a lot of guards. So I mean, at 29, you're talking offensive lineman. If it's not one of these tackles that slide down there, I mean, if they don't go defensive line, you'd almost think they'd have to either go Mbe, I can't say his last name, out of Ohio State, someone like that, or maybe even Tavion Henderson, or Omar Harrington, I think it is, out of North Carolina. One of those two guys at running back, which would be which would be 3 down backs, game breaking type of guys. So that's what you'd be looking at this pick if you don't go in the trenches.
Yeah, there's so many directions they could go easily.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's a season, and we'll touch on this a lot when we talk about the draft.
Yeah.
They need to fill their holes in free agency because you just don't know what's going to be there in the draft. You can't guarantee any holes.
We're currently talking about the draft, by the way, just for the record.
You
said when we talk about the draft, we're currently talking about the draft.
I meant through the whole season, off season.
I was going to say I don't know what we're talking about here.
I don't know what we're talking about half the time either.
I'm sorry, I have to be snarky at some point.
No, it's totally fine, and I can come back at you. It's what we do.
It is. It's what we do.
All right, let's move on to those day 2 guys.
All right, day 2, you have at Ohio State Tyleik Williams, 6'3", 327. Kentucky, Deion Walker, 6'6", 345. TJ Sanders out of South Carolina, 6'4", 290. Alfred Collins out of Texas, 6'5", 3. Then you have Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee, 6'3", 315. Joshua Farmer, 6'3", 318 out of Florida State, and Darius Alexander, 6'4", 310 Toledo. And I completely agree with no one from Tampa on this assessment of Deion Walker. This is my guy. This is the Jordan Davis that I want them to get out of this draft, which, at 6'6", 345 out of Kentucky, he carries his weight very, very well. Great. He has very, very good footwork, rarely ever off balance. And the guy is great with initial contact, very fast with his hands, and he can give you some pass rush. But in terms of run stopping up the middle, he's just like Jordan Davis, clogs it and pushes that line right back in the quarterback's face. But the only way that I would see them doing that is a move if they trade back from 29 to try to get in the top 10 of that second round pick and acquire other draft assets and take them right around there is where I would see them doing something like that. But this guy right here is a guy that I would absolutely love from the draft. Even if they reach him at 29, me personally, I'd be okay with that.
So yeah, if you go onto the Hog side, and I'm watching it right now, he posted some clips that he found on Twitter of Walker's just highlight reels. The guy at that size plays stand-up defensive end sometimes. He plays on the interior.
Yep.
I go crazy when I see, and this is just my OCD, defensive tackle wearing the number 0. That's not right. You should never. That's just wrong.
It's very weird.
That is so creepy. Don't do that in the NFL, please. But yeah, somebody that size lining up everywhere, including basically playing like edge
Well, that was
rushing
what I was about to
linebackers.
say. Is he's lining up all over the place.
Yes.
Yeah. Which you would expect from a guy who's like 250, not
a guy who's 6'6", 345. He's enormous.
Yeah.
So the question would be, why is he a day 2 prospect, not a day 1 prospect?
Probably not elite speed from what I'm just watching there.
He's not going to have elite speed. He's 345 pounds.
Right. No, I get it.
Well, some of his weaknesses that's off of Draft Buzz is that he tends to play too tall, so he can get caught up with some of the more elite guards turns. So once that guard engages and gets into his chest pad right there, I mean, it's tough for him to recover off of that, He still has maintaining his pad level, which when he gets upright and so forth right there. While versatile, he needs to improve. He needs to prove he can handle a full NFL workload across multiple positions, which obviously I don't think he can do that on a consistent basis. It's more of a special, defensive package that'll flex him outside, whatever. Mm-hmm. Some of these reports are more or less like what Jordan Davis was when he came out, except for Jordan Davis was a little more of a dominant pass rusher, or not pass rusher, dominant run stuffer in the middle of the line, and he was just immovable out of Georgia, period. So he's not as dominant as a Jordan Davis, but what he gives you is just as valuable in that center. May not be at the same level, but and also speed and quickness. I mean, he does lack on that a little bit at times too. So he has some consistency issues he has to work on.
Mm-hmm. But so that would make sense then. And also he plays at Kentucky, and people just disrespect Kentucky.
Well, there's some of that too.
Yeah. Yes, look, by the way, if you don't think there's some of that when the draft happens, it absolutely is a thing. There aren't that many great Alabama players who come in every year and all need to be drafted as high as they are. There aren't that, or Ohio State guys. They have plenty of busts from those schools, but they have reputations, so it happens, right? Like, it's that kind of thing. Right. And Kentucky's a basketball school. This guy should be playing center. That's what he should be doing at his size.
Not at 345 pounds, he shouldn't.
I'm talking like 1920 center. Back in like the old days, that's what a center was.
6'6", 345. That's
Yeah. It was also like it might have been like 5'6" back then.
I think he's a fat small forward, is what I think. Very fat small forward.
Yeah. Big. Just hey, run into those guys and like take them all out so we can make a layup.
Don't forget Kobe Bryant was 6'6".
Yes.
At least he was listed at 6'6". He's really 6'5", but
right. No.
And like half of that weight.
Literally, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And then there's some day 3 guys out there.
Yeah.
There's JJ Pegas, CJ West, Cam Hornsley, Zeke Biggers, Cameron Jackson, not Cameron, because there's an
Cameron.
Right.
apostrophe. Ty Hamilton, Tonka Hemingway, Bryson Eason, and then Tommy Akingbiosti. I'm not sure how you pronounce that.
And we're all we are the three have done our research and are very, very familiar with all these people. So we're
Yeah,
going to do
right.
Oh, absolutely.
a special episode on
Right.
just these day 3 prospects, D-line prospects.
Day 3 defensive tackle prospects. That's going to be
Listen.
Yeah, yes. Because we're at like 5 minutes left, so we're just gonna stop down in a few minutes and then just keep listening, and you'll eventually hear our
Okay,
3-hour special.
I'm gonna call an audible because I do want to get to one thing we didn't talk about in our 5 minutes left. But so no one from Tampa did do some research, and he recommended Cam Jackson from Florida of this bunch. So keep an eye on that. So one thing that did happen, I wrote a column about this on Monday. Muriel Bowser, who's the mayor of DC, was asked at a town hall by a citizen whether or not she would outright refuse to put public funds into a potential new Washington stadium at the RFK site. And she expressly said no, meaning, no, I would not refuse. And so clearly, the stadium news, the news out of that is that clearly Washington's intent is to do whatever they can to get funds to build the stadium. Now, how that could happen is the only way it would happen. Remember, they cannot put federal funds into the RFK Stadium site. If there's another site somewhere, and Alex knows what they are, I don't know. If there's another one, they could put federal funds in potentially, but not RFK. So that means they would have to issue bonds, public financing, infrastructure bonds. Now, of course, bonds have to be repaid. You're talking about more than $1 billion in bonds, probably a lot more than that, realistically. The team is not going to put a dime into this. There's too much competition. Virginia, Maryland, it's still more likely they'll go there. But if DC did it, they'd have to do it by bonds. And then to pay back the bonds, you're going to see a humongous increase in hotel and car rental taxes, probably, and other stuff.
Right.
But that was the news, is that Washington is still, Muriel Bowser at least, to the extent she speaks for the entire government, is all in on Washington Stadium. So there's 3. I think they're the least likely option of Maryland, Virginia, DC, but they're legitimately in the competition.
And yeah, they've been doing some local, like meetings, like you said. This one Bowser was
that was
actually
just
at
a town hall. Yeah, it's what.
They were supposed to have one all the way over in like DuPont Circle for some reason, and they canceled it. I'm like, why would you do it there?
Building a football stadium in DuPont Circle.
Yeah, the other side of town. But DuPont Circle's where all the hoity-toities live, and they're not in my neighbor's backyard, not even my backyard. I don't want to. Yeah. They did put out some website with some drawings, if you like that kind of thing. I think it's called RRFK. I can't find it off the top of my just like quick Google search, but there's a website out there with some of their plans, designs, things like that. But yeah, look, first off, the federal government's gonna reject any attempt, even if it wasn't at the RFK site, to use federal funds right now.
That's
clear.
not gonna happen. It's not a thing. The law prohibits federal funds to be used at RFK Stadium. That's not even an option.
Yes, the law prohibits it there, but even if they found 100 acres that they somehow lost and just it wasn't on a map,
it appeared out of nowhere.
It appears, yes, it's a rigadoon of land in the middle of DC. They're not going to spend federal funding. That's out.
Not this administration will not, nor should they. It's totally
no administration.
Wrong.
Yeah, Frank, you and I have talked about this for years. If there were a federal law saying you can't do it at the state level, the local level, and the federal, no government funding, I'd be fine with it at this point.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be in favor of such a law because then you have the federal government dictating what the state can spend state money on, and that I don't agree with.
Well, I'm saying as a larger point, we shouldn't be spending government
there should be
funding. Period.
Completely true. And again, bonds sound great, but at the end of the day, bonds have to be repaid, and the state government has to repay those bonds. And the DC I got news for everybody. The DC government cannot pay back $1 billion or $1.5 billion in bonds. They're still paying for this for the Nats Stadium. Same thing. Bank of America funded these bonds. $350 million, still paying for it. So I just think it's highly unlikely, no matter what. I know what everybody wants because of the nostalgia of RFK. But number one, it's gone, dead and gone. Redskins are gone, long time ago. Move on. But number two, they can't afford it.
And that's the one thing I agree wholeheartedly. That whole nostalgia RFK is gone when the Redskins is gone anyway. You got plenty of land right where they're at right now. Just build something right next to it while you use the other stadium. Once it's done, level that, make it to a parking lot, and then go from there. That's just what I hope anyway.
I think the truth is that Maryland or Virginia is going to come with a much better offer that they can actually afford.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. That's going to be the interesting thing because Virginia's basically been out of it after their fiasco with trying to build a hockey stadium and a basketball stadium. And
that's why I think Maryland's more likely, but I mean, they could get it together. They could afford to do that a lot easier. And there's more land.
Yeah, Maryland's put together a decent proposal already where they're saying build it closer to the metro on the land you have, basically. Over out there in Loudon. Or not Loudon, Landover.
Prince George's County.
Yeah. And yeah, well, I don't think they were going to put up any money initially, but things change.
They're gonna not put money up, okay? They are gonna.
Yeah, I still, I said a while ago on here before that once this all started going through with the bill for the arcade site, that this was and the reason why Josh Hatch was so happy because he now has a bargaining chip to turn to Maryland. How much more can you offer for this now?
Right.
And I think ultimately Maryland's going to be the one, like you said, he's going to come up with the best offer, and I think it's going to want him staying in Maryland. To be honest with you,
I think that you're absolutely right. That's what Harris is doing, and we'll see what offer they can get. But Maryland could easily get more money together, I'd think, if they wanted to. But they also need to do the Ravens Stadium next because the stadiums are the same age.
Maryland can afford to pay back $1.5 billion in bonds.
Right. But they're, like I said, they're going to have to do two stadiums at once. Then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. I didn't mean to call an audible, and that we're out of time. I didn't mean to call an audible, but I want to get that. And I did write a column about this that was published on Monday, so y'all can read it there.
Yeah. Yep. So that should do it for our episode today. I hope you all have a good weekend, and we have some dead time till football comes back, and even free agency is going to make it fun. But I'll just be sitting there doing UFL stuff, watching minor league football between now and then.
So next week we've got the free agency preview is corners and safeties, and we've got edge rushers for the draft.
Yep. All right, guys. We will talk to you all next week.
All right, later.